All right there, this is one of my first YouTube videos I'm going to be making on this bike, so bear with me as I might not know terms of everything, but I'm going to give you a quick how-to on how to do a wheel set. This is mainly the install instructions for the Lunicycle 2118 set that I have just gotten in. As you can see, my 21-inch front is over there currently. That is because I have made a grave mistake, and one of these bolts right up here I snapped off when I was tightening it back up after putting my axle back in. So if you're going to do this, don't do that. It's not fun. Got an extractor coming, going to get that out. So but in the meantime, I'm going to try and give a little how-to just so people can, understand how to put these things on if they've never put any wheels and tires or anything on these bikes. So I'm going to try and do this all one take as well. So basically the steps are, it's very recommended, at least for me, that you get one of these bike stands for dirt bikes. It just keeps the bike off the ground a good decent bit. Like, you can slide it back some, and then the front will be kicked up at an angle. So basically sit this part of your skid plate right here, and then you'll get to the front wheel. So to do the front wheel on these bikes, this is your axle. You'll want to get a 12mm Allen, or I've found that a 3/8 extension, like the head of it, that where you can put a socket on it, fits perfectly in here, so that you can hold this instead of having to find a 12mm Allen, because not many people have that. Then you get your Allen key over here. Don't remember the exact size, but you crack this nut loose right here. This is the side with the brake, and it's the opposite of the throttle side, so like the left side if you're sitting on it. Spin this lefty loosey righty tighty. If you don't know that, you shouldn't be working on these bikes really. But you spin this off, and then, or not spin it completely off, but just crack it loose. Then loosen these 4 bolts right here, and then I don't recommend prying on it a ton, but just kind of stick a screwdriver, a flathead in here, and just twist a little, just to get like a little tiny gap. It makes pulling the axle out a lot easier. So then once you get done with loosening those, you spin this cap a little bit, give it a tap until this axle starts coming out, and then spin it just till about the end of the threads, give it a couple more taps, and then the axle will, for the most part, come out. If it's getting a little stuck, you can take your Allen key. I have these T-Allens with like a T-handle on them. So you just stick that in there and hit it out, and it'll come out. Make sure you don't let the wheel drop super hard, because then it'll put a lot of unnecessary pressure on this. I know these are stiff and like strong, but it wouldn't hurt to put a bunch of unnecessary like bent force on it. Well, first cut, sorry. Wife came in, had to talk to her, so definitely not going to do this no cut anymore, but we'll get it all figured out. Anyway, after what I was saying is, like, once you crack this loose and crack all these bolts loose, you can hammer out with a like a T, or just like I even stuck a 1/4-inch extension in there, or not 1/4 inch, 3/8 extension, the same thing I used to hold this side over here when you don't have the 12mm Allen, and you kind of just lightly tap it out. It will not come completely out until you take this cap completely off. So you can see right here, this little cap with the Allen key in it, you won't be able to take this axle out until this comes completely off. So just spin that out completely. Once you get it kind of hammered over and started, then you can just stick your extension in there and lightly tap it out. Don't hit it super duper hard, because you might break something. Don't know what, but if it's not coming out with a good little hammer tap, you're probably not doing something right. So once you get the front wheel off, pull your front wheel just straight out. You'll see your brake calipers right there. Note, do not squeeze super hard on your brake levers at all, or try not to squeeze them at all, but super hard while the tire is off, because it will compress the brake pads. And then you will have a hard time getting the wheel back in, or you will have to recompress it like out, and then the piston will have to be recompressed so that you can fit the disc back in there. But anyway, when you pull it out, then once you pull your factory wheel out, you'll have this guy right here. It's got 6 hex bolts right here. They are a Torx bit. Not sure which one, because it was a little bit smaller than the rear one. But anyway, you get your Torx bit set, and then take all 6 of those bolts out. And then once you get those all out, sorry, just kind of moving. You will need to swap over your 6 bolts and your factory disc, unless you want to buy discs, if you can find them, or a good price for whichever one you want. But swap your discs over, tighten these in a crisscross pattern, put blue Loctite on them because they come with blue Loctite from the factory. These are not meant to be super duper tight. I kind of got them until they stopped with like your hand force, and then just a little bit, just a little bit. There is a torque spec. I've broken bolts on torque specs on these bikes because of these bolts not being super high quality from the factory. So bears you will with doing that. So once you get the brake rotor swapped over, you're basically done for swapping parts from the front. What you will have to do is put these little spacers in, and that's what you heard fall off the factory wheel over there. These are basically the dust cap spacer combo deals for the front of these bikes. Your factory wheel has them. If you built your bike and didn't buy it used, you built it out of the box, you had to install these on your wheel because they fell off in shipping like mine did, or they were just not installed at all. So once you get both of those installed on both sides, they're not side specific. You will just put those on. Kind of be sensitive. There is an O-ring that you have to slip over. I can actually grab this one right here. So this is the spacer. There's going to be an O-ring that is on here. It's kind of hard for it to focus, but there's an O-ring right there. Slip it over. Be very careful when pressing it back onto the wheel, because when you're doing that, you can tear the O-ring, or it'll slip out, and then your hub is not sealed from water, dust, or anything like that. If you're gonna ride your bike off-road during the rain a lot like I do, it's gonna get water in there, and then you're gonna have a bad time once your bearing goes out. All right, part 3 of this same video. Once you finish up with the front wheel, getting the all the caps put on, so getting your cone caps on and getting your brake rotor on and torque down, then just repeat the process of what I showed you on how to pull the front wheel out. So, slide it on up in there. You're going to have to rotate your guards, like the little plastic guards that are on there. You're going to have to rotate them a little bit. It's kind of hard to get in there with one person, but it is possible. So you put your wheel in there, then get the axle, slide it in from the throttle side, so the right side of the bike if you're sitting on it. Slide it through, put the axle nut on it and tighten it down. Also note, while you're pushing it through, those little spacer things that are on right there can pop off, so just be careful to make sure that those go back on. I've seen a lot of people in the forums complain about them missing or just not putting them on when they installed their wheels from the factory, and that's not a good time, so just don't do that. So once you get it done, tighten your axle cap on the outside down. It is, I believe, 10 Newton meters, but do not, no, 15 Newton meters. Don't quote me on that though. Go to Luna Cycle's website, and then go down in the Sting R's page description, and then Once you're doing that, they will have like a little blue links in the description of these bikes. Click the one that says warranty. It'll bring you to their main little forum page, and then you can go from there. And they have a big exploded sheet of all the torque specs for all the little bolts on this bike. Super great. If you get it, save the image on your phone, save it, print it out, whatever you want to do. It's good to have. Even though I have broken bolts, that's how that happened up there. But, you know, if you get a higher grade bolt and not like some little cast, real cheap aluminum bolt that's going to strip out, you'll be good. So slide your axle through, torque down your axle cap nut on the end, and then once you get that done, re-tighten down and torque your 4 main pinch bolts for the axle. Be careful, do not strip them on the heads, because I've done that. And then also do not over torque them or over tighten them. If they feel like they're getting really tight and the torque wrench still has not clicked, just stop. If it looks like the metal is touching, just stop. And then I always just check them anyway before every ride. Just look down at it. If you see a gap, grab your Allen, tighten them up. You'll be good to go. But I do recommend getting a upgraded bolt, or you could be like everyone else that seems to be getting the titanium sets. Those are probably good, but they're just expensive, and I'm not about spending a bunch of money on a little shiny piece of bolt. But they do hold up a lot better than these, it seems. So if you're wanting to go that route, by all means, it's your money, do as you please. So once you get all those tightened back up, and when you're sliding your wheel back in, make sure you line it up with the brake. Don't knock your pads out. Don't bend anything. Don't just try and shove it. Make sure you line up the rotor. So next part I'm going to cut to is going to be the rear. All right, so now for the rear. The rear is actually easier to me, even though it's more bolts. It is a little bit easier. So basically the quick way to get it done, in my opinion, is to remove these 2 bolts right here that hold on your brake caliper. Pull those. Make sure you catch the little shim, because this is the spacer that is meant to be used so that you can use 220 millimeter rotors. If you take this out, you'll be back down to MX3 spec and be running 200 millimeter rotors, or 203, whatever it is. It's like Surons and all that stuff like that. So make sure you keep that. Take these bolts out, and then this will just pull right off. You can just kind of use the brake hose and just drape it off to the side. Once you get that done, you go grab the size Allen for this bolt right here. Sometimes it won't spin, sometimes it will. Just stick it in there. Then you go over to this side, and then you loosen this nut right here. Spin the nut completely off. Then if you have a chain like tensioner that's set real far out and your chain is set like pretty tight, I need to loosen that. I just haven't tuned it or anything. Take your chain link off, which would be, let me spin this around real quick for you guys so I can show you, because I didn't know how to take a chain apart when I first got one of these things. So right here, that's your chain link, where your master link, where everything goes together. I usually just kind of put a piece of, like a screwdriver right here, and pop this way. You'll see that it's split. Pop it that way, pull the this retaining clip off, pull the little faceplate off, and then there will be some O-rings on your factory chain that will need to come off, and make sure you don't lose them, because you need them to put them back for the O-ring chain. Then the little link will just pop it on the other side, and you can take your chain off. So once you get the chain off, take this nut off completely, and then from this side, you can kind of just bump it with your hand. The axle will pop out on this side, and then you just pull it out. Make sure while you're doing that, have a good hold on your wheel, because it will just want to fall. The sprocket side is going to fall down first. Then to take these wheels out, mine always gets hung up, yours may be different, but the brake caliper bracket that is right here has a little notch that is, or like a little peg that it slides back and forth on to keep it upright like this. That is on the back side of the swing arm right here. So when you're pulling that off, you kind of just have to grab this and pull out a little bit while holding your wheel, and then it'll just drop down. So then once you drop down your stock wheel, mine is right there. Not gonna grab it. You basically, it's the same as the front. You're gonna wanna pull all of these bolts right here to remove your factory rotor. Again, if you got different rotors, you can just install those, but you will need to get hardware because this wheel set from Luna does not come with hardware of any kind. The only thing that it comes with is the spacers, which I will get into where those go because I was a little bit confused the first time, but it comes with the spacers and dust cap. That's it. And then the wheels. But so yeah, you're gonna need to get hardware for that. I'm also gonna replace mine because I plan to have 2 sets. As you can see, I have Shinkos on my stock ones that I'm swapping out as well. So take all those bolts out, transfer your brake rotor, put all the bolts back in with blue Loctite, not red because you want it to come off if you ever have to replace them. Put blue Loctite on, tighten them down, do the same spec. If you want to torque it to spec, do that. I've already rounded one of these out that I'm going to have to extract because I guess either my torque wrench is wrong, but it's a pretty good torque wrench. It works on everything on my car, but I think it's just these cheap bolts. So get your bolts, tighten them all back down onto the new wheel set. Then you're going to want to go do the same thing on the sprocket side. The sprocket are going to be a larger Allen bolt, which I'll show you. It's going to be these guys right here. You'll break all those loose. These are pretty tight. Pretty sure they used red Loctite from the factory because they just didn't want them to come out. But take all those out. Pretty sure there's 5 of them. Loosen them all. I believe they're a 6mm Allen as well. Loosen all those up, pull them out. Then your sprocket will come off. If you're going to want to use the same sprocket that you have, I decided to go with a 52 tooth, but I just needed the bolts. So, or a 54 tooth, but I just needed the bolts. So I pulled them off my stock wheels and put them on this. So I used my 54 tooth sprocket instead of the 48 and that I had on there. And then also, you could also use your 44 tooth that comes stock on the MX4. So pull all these off, put your new sprocket on the new wheel set, and then you can bolt it back up and tighten it down. There is a torque spec for these on that sheet as well that I explained that Luna has on their little forum. So once you get all that done, then the main thing that you have to do correctly is where to put the little shims that come in the box. Whenever you get your box, there will be this envelope in here. Do not throw this away. This will have the shims and stuff on the inside. Sorry if I'm breathing heavy. I haven't talked this long in one span in a long time. The shims, there will be 2 different sizes. One is longer and one is shorter. I mean, that sounds pretty duh, but the larger one that is longer goes on the sprocket side. So you'll take the little machine down edge, put the fatter tops part facing out, and then press it down into the wheel. It'll go right inside of there. You can see where the bearing is. Make sure it goes in straight and just push it down in there. It should slide pretty easily. Then you will take the corresponding dust cap. You will notice that it's about the same diameter as the hole that is over there because the sprocket side is bigger. So you'll get the bigger dust cap. Actually, rewind. Put the dust cap on the little spacer and then press it in because you cannot put it on after the fact. So press the dust cap onto the shim and then press it into the wheel. And then you'll want to slowly go around and work the rubber seal into the bearing, like recess where it's at. You will have to work it in slowly around and just kind of tap it in slow. That is what seals all the dust and water and everything out of your rear hub of your wheel. So you need to make sure that you get that done. Then do the same on the other side. Press the rubber little dust cap onto your shim and then press it into the wheel and work it in. Then once you get all that done, you're on the home stretch. So you got your Luna 18, put the wheel back up in there, then put your bracket back on, it kind of has like a little recess right here that sits on the outside of the shim that you just put in on the brake side, the smaller one. Just remember that smaller one goes on the brake side. Smaller, shorter, same thing. Goes on the brake side. Slide this on, and then make sure you line up down in there. It's kind of hard to see that right there. You see that little peg? Make sure you line it up with the correct slot on this bracket so that your bracket will sit up properly for your caliper to mount properly. So slide it up in there. Make sure you got your adjuster on. These are just some aftermarket adjusters I got off the China website. Slide your axle through on the other side. Then you put your nut back on, kind of snug it up. And then you will set your chain tension. It all is kind of up to personal preference what you want to do at that point. But mine's pretty tight right now, and it's because it's at full droop. You spin these nuts and spin them back and forth to set the chain tension. Make sure that the factory ones have just one little point. These have multiple points, but make sure that you line up one of the ones on it with one of these lines, or in the middle. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that, like if you go by the center line on this, make sure that the one on the other side is at the exact same point on these little markings on the axle. And then once you get that done and get your chain tensioned, yes, this is a little tight. I have not adjusted it properly, but you want about I'd say an inch or so of play on each side. So be able to go up an inch and be able to go down an inch. So then you're set. And just remember, when you're putting your new chain on, do the reverse of what I said with the master link, and that's how you put your chain back together. The O-rings will fight you and make it a little bit harder to press together, but that is just what you have to do to have O-ring chain. If you get a non-O-ring chain, you're going to have to lube it, clean it all the time, make sure it's good to go, or it's going to start to get all kind of gritty and grindy. I've had stuff on my four-wheelers without O-ring chains, and they just, if you don't take care of them, they'll get kind of gritty and crappy, especially if you ride these things in the mud, which they can handle. So once you do that, torque down your bolt over there, and then once you get that torqued down, again, torque spec is online. I don't really torque this, so I just kind of snug it up by hand, but you can torque it if you want. Then once you're done and have your bracket up and your wheel mounted properly and your chain adjusted, if you have a super short chain though, one thing to note for these wheels, they have a pretty tall knob on them, so they're going to get real close up there if you have your adjustment set real far forward. So make sure you get it appropriately linked chain for your size sprocket. I don't know if the 44 tooth that comes stock with these will fit with the stock chain if you have these, because mine ended up being real far forward due to how this was, like how these bolts are kind of pressed in there instead of just riding on the edge. It did shift forward a lot, so just bear in mind, get a properly linked chain. You can look up on Luna on their sprocket, or go on Warp 9. They have a good one as well. Go to the Talaria XXX page, look at the sprocket, and then it'll show you whatever tooth sprocket you have, whatever link chain you can get. I got the Niche X-Ring 420 chain off of Amazon. It's so much quieter already than I've noticed than the original O-ring chain, and it comes with extra oil. So once you just get whatever you need and make sure it's properly set up, because you will have some rubbing up here if you have this set all the way forward. Lastly, put your caliper back on. Make sure you didn't squeeze the brake rotor or the brake caliper master cylinder up there on your lever, or you will have to then compress it back out to get it to slide over. Slide it over. Make sure you put your shim, unless you're converting to 200 rotors for some reason, but you use your stock rotors, use the shim, put the bolts back in, blue Loctite on them, and then tighten them down. There's a torque spec. I don't do it. That's just personal preference, but recommend that you torque if you want the most reliable setting. If you know, don't hold me accountable if you tighten it with just by hand and it falls off and then something crazy happens, I'm not responsible. I know you gotta say that on YouTube now. But also sorry this is a super long video. I know most people are making it to the end by now, hopefully, if they're trying to really learn about these, but I just wanted to be super involved and not have a bunch of cuts, because I know I watch a lot of videos on these bikes and people just jump cut trying to make the video real short and precise, and I just get confused because they're like, they won't explain something and then they'll be like, oh, yeah, people will understand that, and then you're lost because you don't understand because you're a newbie like I was with these bikes. So yeah, tighten your bolts down, slide your caliper on, you got your axle all good, and then once you get that step done, you will have your 1821 wheel set. I recommend testing out if your front end is going to hit, depending on what fork you have. They have on their website, depending on what fork you have in the front, to if you're going to need a more narrow tire or not. But just make sure you check all that stuff out before you order it, and so you don't have to go back and forth with their customer service and deal with all that BS. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm not going to ask you to like and subscribe because I'm probably not going to put out many other videos on these bikes unless I find something else that I think there should be a video for. So yeah, hope that helps. If you have any questions, you can drop a comment below, or message me on Instagram. My Instagram is crisp, CRISP media, and there's a period between those two. So yeah, you can message me on there. That's my photography page. I don't post on there anymore, but if you want to message me in there, good to go. And then yeah, if you have any other questions, you can also drop them below. I get on YouTube every day, so I will respond to them as quickly as possible. And if I don't know the answer, I will resource an answer through the forums or through somebody if you're not a part of the Facebook forums. So yeah, hope you guys all have a good day, and thanks for watching.